And welcome back to Capitol View. I'm David Goins. We're now joined by our esteemed political roundtable, Representative Darrin Williams of Little Rock to my right, and further to my right, Alice Stewart, GOP community strategist, obviously radio host on 96.5 as well. Thank you all very much for joining us this morning.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
All right, let's go with our first question here in this segment, guys. We're going to talk about what's going on in the U.S. Senate race in 2014. Right now, Mark Pryor doesn't have any opposition, $2 million in the bank, but he's pegged as the most vulnerable U.S. Senator potentially in the country. Is Mark Pryor in the ropes, or is he starting from a position of advantage? Darrin Williams.
Well, let me just start with my bias for Mark Pryor. Of course, I was his chief of staff in the Attorney General's office, a longtime good friend, and I would say he's starting from a position of strength. Clearly, you've got $2 million in the bank in one quarter, more than $2 million actually, raised $2 million in about the first quarter. $1 million in one fundraiser in the state of Arkansas. Arkansas comes first with Mark. He has high favorable ID here in Arkansas, high name ID, and he puts Arkansas first. He's a moderate a Democrat. People like to use the term bipartisan. He's bipartisan. What that means is he's effective. He can get things done. He can work with both sides of the aisle to actually do things that are good for the state of Arkansas. So I think he starts from a position of strength, and I'd love to be him if I was choosing. I'd choose to be Mark Pryor.
Well, and I think there's a reason why he's one of the most, or the most vulnerable, according to that several national articles, in that he is certainly extremely personable and very popular, but he's not predictable, and that's a concern on big issues, guns, life, and gay marriage here in Arkansas. On the gun issue, he used to be for gun control. He just recently voted against it. On life, he voted for federal funding for the largest abortion provider, Planned Parenthood, but he says he's pro-life. And on the gay marriage issue, which is one cornerstone for the liberals, is that he was undecided on that issue. Now he says he's strongly opposed to it. So the unpredictability is a concern, and that's why I'm getting emails every day from Republicans and Democrats, Bloomberg, and even the Obama administration saying, watch out, be wary of Mark Pryor.
And Alice, you mentioned the gun issue with him, voting against the expanded background check. That was the Manchin Toomey vote that he talked so much about on Friday at the Delta Caucus in Little Rock. He talked a lot about that he voted for the Grassley version that didn't pass the Senate. He also told us that during this interim, if they can somehow find a hybrid of these two ideas and put them together, it'll be something he'll maybe go back and take a look at. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we're not going to get any kind of gun legislation passed in this session, regardless of how much the president wants it. And I will hand it to Senator Pryor in that he is putting Arkansas first and is doing what the people of the state want, and despite getting the pressure from D.C. But as we said, this is an election year conversion. We don't know which way he's going to be. If he were to be reelected, is he going to go back to his old ways, or is he going to stay being more in the middle? And that's a concern for voters in the state.
Does the gun issue hurt him, Darrin?
Well, I think his vote on the gun issues is right in line with what Arkansas is. And Alice would paint him, I guess, as a flip-flopper. I said he's right squarely with Arkansas, and that's where I want him to be. I don't care about these national folks that are calling her and emailing her. I don't care really about President Obama calling her, emailing her, his cabinet. What I care about is Mark does what's best for the state of Arkansas. That's the Mark Pryor that's been elected year after year. That's the Mark Pryor that we love, and that's who we'll have.
Let's talk about who may challenge Mark Pryor in the U.S. Senate race. You've got 4th District Congressman Tom Cotton basically told me on Thursday that he gave me a great big maybe, but it was a pretty big hole that he gave me a maybe on. I think that his quote was, I learned in the Army to never say never, and to always, it's a bad idea to always say always. So is Tom Cotton the perennial favorite to run against Mark Pryor, and why?
He's certainly the one people are talking about. He was recently elected into Congress in D.C., really making a name for himself on a lot of the issues, particularly foreign policy. But he's doing all the right things, and that he is meeting with all the right people, money people and party people, but also building a grassroots network, not just with people in his district, but across the state and in D.C., which is important. There's talks of other people that may get into it, but right now Representative Cotton is laying the groundwork to potentially make that announcement.
Is that the candidate that Mark Pryor wants, Tom Cotton?
Well, I'm not sure which candidate Mark wants, but I tell you, I think it goes to your first question. We see how vulnerable he is because nobody's come out against him. No one's decided, and I think it's time for people to decide if they want to run. And I think the reason why you don't have a groundswell of people running, I mean, how many folks folks in the governor's race now, you know, and how many are talking about it. I think the reason why you don't see that is because Mark is strong. He's not vulnerable, and they know that's a race that's going to be very, very hard for him to lose. And so I'm excited by where he is.
And we will certainly get into more of these topics as you guys can stick around for another block. Representative Darrin Williams and Alice Stewart will be back on Capitol View coming up. Continued discussion with our political roundtable. Stick around. Capitol View after the break.
One of the real advantages of electric cooperatives membership is having a voice in our state's energy future.
Not a week goes by without important energy issues making headlines. These are issues that need to be discussed. And you should know that as policies are being developed, the cooperatives are looking out for our members, advocating what's best for you.
We are your friends and neighbors.
We are your local electric company.
The electric cooperatives.
We are Arkansas.
Welcome back to Capitol View. I'm Roby Brock along with David Goins. We're joined by our political roundtable, Alice Stewart with the Alice Stewart Show, Representative Darrin Williams, Democrat from Little Rock.
And picking up where we were, at the end of the last block, before we touch on healthcare, difference between Mark Pryor in 2014 and Blanche Lincoln in 2010. And the reason I asked that, obviously Blanche Lincoln had an opponent, but there's that sense of they're both in the middle. They're they're right in the middle of 100 senators or number 50. Is that a safe place to be?
I think it's the right place to be. I think it's where Arkansas wants Mark to be. And the difference is, you nailed it on the head. Mark is not going to face any significant challenge for anyone in his own party. Unfortunately, Senator Lincoln had a challenger, and I think that hurt her in the general election. Mark's going to have the entire party behind him, and we're going to work to make sure that he wins in 2014.
I don't see a whole lot difference in the two of them. Both of them, hook, line, and sinker, lined up with President Obama on these liberal issues in Washington, and that's not representative of the people of Arkansas. In terms of their voting record, before this election year conversion, Mark Pryor voted 95% along with the president, and Obamacare hurt Blanche Lincoln, and it's going to come back as we get closer to the election and be a thorn in the side for Mark Pryor. Despite if he has an opponent or not, when it gets down closer to the election, that's going to come back to hurt him.
Darrin, I want to come to you first with this question. You guys obviously passed the private option in this latest legislative session. It's got ties to Obamacare. That has obviously been something that Republicans have run on very successfully for the last 2 election cycles. How does the health care issue play out for Republicans, for Democrats in this next cycle?
Well, I think it's a really strong issue for Democrats, and I think it's got the Republicans really in a quandary, because so many of my Republican colleagues ran on the fact they're going to vote against and tear down Obamacare. We're not going to adopt that in Arkansas. Well, we adopted it, and it's the best thing for the state of Arkansas. So you have to ask, did you believe what they said when they said they were going to vote against it, or do you believe them now? And it was the best thing. I'm glad that we found a bipartisan solution, but their words and their actions have not matched up. And I think the voters really care about credibility, and that may be a problem.
Well, look, I mean, the fact is the state didn't want Obamacare. The Republicans in the General Assembly didn't want Obamacare. We tried to make the best of a bad situation. You and the House Democrats wanted Medicaid expansion, but the Republicans came in there and looked at a more marketplace solution, a more conservative option for Medicaid expansion or Obamacare, and this was a conservative alternative to what we were handed, which is not a good situation. So in the end, this is better than Medicaid expansion, and this is a more fiscally responsible. Key is it has to be approved by HHS, and we'll see if that happens.
And I feel there's probably more that both of y'all could say on this topic and a lot more, but Darrin Williams, appreciate you being here. Alice Stewart, obviously, Monday through Fridays in the mornings on 96.5. Thanks y'all very much for both being here.
Appreciate it.
That is going to wrap it up for this morning's Capitol View. Of course, coming up next is Meet the Press with 4th District Congressman Tom Cotton. Will join Rudy Giuliani, former New York mayor, and Senator Pat Leahy to discuss keeping America safe.
And Jason Collins, the first openly gay active pro athlete, talks to David Gregory.
And be sure to tune into KARK4 today. All this week, Mallory Brooks has a 5-part exclusive interview with Governor Beebe talking private option, the race to pick his successor, and his first pitch at a Detroit Tigers game.
Join us next Sunday at 8:30 a.m. with another edition of Capitol View. We'll see you then.